All right, I would like to welcome everyone to our webinar today. We're going to go ahead and get started. We probably have a few more people that'll jump on, but it shouldn't be an issue. I'm going to introduce myself and our speaker, and then I have a few introductory slides, and then we're going to turn it over to Andrew. So this is the third in our spring food safety webinar series from University of Idaho Extension. We work in partnership with the Idaho State Department of Agriculture as our regulator for the FSMA produce safety rule. I'm Ariel Agenbrock. I'm an area extension educator in community food systems and small farms. I'm located in the Boise area, and I work with a lot of our regional growers in that part of the state, but my food safety responsibilities are statewide. And so we welcome our attendees from around the state and even outside the state. If you've attended one of our Produce Safety Alliance grower trainings, you've heard from me and the rest of our team. And we're really excited to present this webinar series this year based on your questions and on the observations made by our inspectors during the inspection year. We're very excited about today's presentation, really focused on the literal nitty-gritty of post-harvest cleaning and sanitation. And with us today as our guest presenter is someone that knows a lot about that, and I'm going to introduce them in just a second, but I forgot I want to run over a few housekeeping items to help make this experience the best it can be for you. So we have found that it helps to increase the quality of your webinar experience if you don't have other programs running on your computer at the same time. If you're having problems with your sound, you can try switching speakers. You can also, as a last resort, call in using the number in the welcome email that had, and you can watch on screen and listen on the phone. My sound is a little echoey. I'm here in an empty office offsite. And luckily, I won't be doing all the talking today. So I think Andrew's got much better sound. If you do have questions throughout the webinar, we can't see you. You don't have the option to share your camera on this webinar format, but we do have the chat available and Q&A. So if you want to ask questions anonymously just to us, you can use the Q&A box. And if you want to start a discussion or ask a general question, you can certainly use the chat as well. All these webinars for the three-part series are being recorded, and I will have those recordings available to all registered participants by the end of this week. So if you missed one or you want to go back and watch it again, that will be available to you. So our goals for today's webinar is that we're going to hope that you learn a little bit more about some of the risks to produce safety that happen during post-harvest activities. We also hope that you'll increase your knowledge of how to address the risk factors that are present in your own operation and be more prepared to implement some of the best practices shared in your operation, or if you're not farming, but you work with farmers, to help you in your outreach work. So our very special guest for today is Andrew Chamberlin. Andrew comes to us from the Agricultural Engineering Department at University of Vermont Extension. He's an engineering technician. Just a little bit about their program, and hopefully he'll share more about their research team and his role. But the UVM Extension Agriculture Engineering Program is geared to assisting these food entrepreneurs in a rapidly changing and highly competitive industry. The education and outreach program is dedicated to enhancing Vermont's food systems. They focus on analysis, design, evaluation, and adoption of infrastructure, technology, and equipment to meet the needs of producers and processors. And since we discovered that this was really a need in our state and among our growers, we are very happy to bring the expertise from you and your team, Andrew, to help our Idaho growers. So with that, I'm going to stop my share, and we'll let Andrew bring up his slides. And then at the end, I will have a few closing slides and a little bit about our end of webinar survey.
There we go. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Andy Chamberlin, as Ariel said, from the University of Vermont Extension and the Ag Engineering program, which is largely myself and Chris Callahan. We work closely with a broad team, particularly on the Scrub project. So I'm going to give a little bit of intro as far as what the Scrub project is, the types of work we've done, and then hopefully leave you with some helpful bits to take away to improve the produce safety on your farm. On my slides, you will see links. We have a short link to almost every resource that I mentioned. And the preface of that is go.uvm.edu/ whatever the topic is generally. So you'll see that on my slides. Before I get started, I also wanted to mention that we are active on social media, both Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And that this QR code right there brings you straight to our homepage on our website. So a little bit more background about me. I've been with Extension for 5 years now. I live just outside the Burlington, Vermont area, and I specialize in ag engineering, which is a fuzzy term, but really what I focus on is post-harvest handling. Stuff in the wash pack is kind of my specialty, and I'm also an outreach professional, so I kind of specialize in creating these hopefully useful guides, videos, fact sheets, podcasts, all sorts of content in a diverse way to help growers implement produce safety. So today I'm going to cover the Scrub project, going to show you some hand washing stations, introduce you to Produce Safety Module 6, hygienic design, cleaning tools, and some color coding techniques. So what is the Scrub project? The Scrub project is a USDA FSOP program or food safety outreach program that I'm part of with a multi-state team. We've got people in Michigan and Georgia and New York mainly. And we help create resources or curate resources that are helpful and improve cleaning and sanitizing. A lot of this has been one-on-one technical support as growers have reached out to us, or we've interacted with growers and learned about their needs from conferences and whatnot. So we've provided one-on-one technical assistance. We've provided online training events, much like this one here that we're doing today. And then we also have a web page dedicated to resources that we think are helpful. So first off, to talk about the events that the Scrub project has done, we have hosted these Twilight highlight webinars, so to speak, that have all been passed. We're getting near the end of the project, so we're kind of in the analysis phase rather than the outreach phase. But all of these webinars have been recorded, much like today's, and is on YouTube for later viewing. These topics include honing your management style to recruit and retain a lean and clean farm crew, payback on purchasing new wash pack equipment, workarounds in washing greens that you can't live without, what not to do to save time in the pack shed, how to talk to contractors about your farm building construction project. We talk about bins, wash pack floors, doing more with less. So kind of high value and low cost type of projects, wash water management, tools for employee management and empowerment, as well as a webinar on bubblers and aerators for washing greens. And a couple of benefits that the YouTube provides is that you can watch these whenever you want. They all have closed captioning, so you can turn that on and read along if that's helpful to you. You can also adjust the playback speed, which I often get away with. You can often listen to YouTube videos at like 1.5 or maybe even 2x speed if you've had enough coffee. And that helps you kind of get through it a little quicker, or slow it down if you really need to absorb the information. And many of these have chapter markers if you want to just skip to a certain section of the webinar. In addition to these, we've have a web page, as I mentioned, that highlights specific resources applicable to farms. We work with NECAFS, which is the Northeast Center to Advance Food Safety, and they have created a web page that houses hundreds and hundreds of food safety related resources. They have a food safety clearinghouse. And we went through the clearinghouse and picked the most relevant ones that we think are helpful for farms and highlighted those on our website. They cover topics like produce safety planning, water, hygienic and sanitary design, standard operating procedures, training, as well as culture and case studies. And you can see in the picture to the right that we have direct links if it's a web page or straight to a PDF, or if it's a video, it's noted and linked right there. So there's multiple ways to which you can learn. For example, if you're looking for an example on hand wash station, there's a link right there to get you to hand wash station. If you're looking for a cleaning SOP, there's a link to a cleaning SOP right there that you could probably download and either change or implement directly straight to your farm. So here's an example of hand washing stations, and this came out of COVID times. Actually, we were approached saying that farmers markets wanted to continue on, but it was a priority that people have the opportunity to wash their hands to, for everybody's health and safety at that time. So Chris and I sat together kind of in a war room type scenario and brainstormed, okay, how can we do essentially an off-grid hand washing station that can be assembled by anybody, readily available parts, and is affordable? And so we came up with this design, actually two designs. One of them works off a wire rack, and one of them is made out of plywood and 2x4s. And then the basics of this is that we use gravity to our advantage. We use a 5-gallon water tank with a spring-loaded spigot, much like a lemonade pitcher would have. And then that is attached to a cable, which goes through an eyelet. And then the eyelet just loops around to the bottom to create a foot pedal that you can easily step on. And then you got a hands-free soap dispenser. However, we found that the batteries in those the sensors in those didn't work very well outside in the sunlight. So we just decided to go with a bottle of soap because after all, you're washing your hands afterwards. So it's not a high risk situation to touch the soap bottle. And then that goes into a basin that acts like a sink or a closed tote, essentially. And then that tote has a drain fitting with a piece of tubing that goes down into another either 5-gallon bucket or water tank that can be easily carried off later. And here's just, I'll back up another image so you can see that's the water tank with the spigot down to a cable. And then we used a little piece of PEX tubing on the bottom to zip tie a board to make a place foot here pedal. And then the water drains into, this is an oil pan from the hardware store. It was like $4 with the fitting drilled in the back to drain into a bucket. And then the one on the right is similar, uses a tote. You can see we zip tied or screwed a single-use paper towels also to the side of this. Worked pretty well. I did find that this chrome rack that I use did get rusty with weather, so that was a drawback. But having the wheels and making it easily assemblable was quite convenient. So like I said, there's a link to these, how to build it, a whole bill of materials if that suits your fancy. Or we've got resources on many other options as well. But that's enough about washing your hands. I want to go back to the basics a little bit. And this is not a Produce Safety Alliance grower training webinar. However, that I'm a produce safety educator. I've been trained as a trainer to teach this, and I often present on module 6 because that's my area of specialty. So I'm just going to highlight a couple of slides because I think that it's a good reminder when thinking about wash pack produce safety in the pack shed. So the couple slides I'm going to highlight is that sanitation practices is really your basic cleaning guidance. It's best not to overthink it, and that basic housekeeping goes a long ways. So eliminating pests and debris, minimizing standing water, and providing training so the workers can implement good housekeeping practices. And then when you're cleaning, to use the 4-step cleaning and sanitizing process when possible for equipment and tools such as harvest containers, packing tables, and packing lines. Now, the one section of the FSMA produce safety rule that I have almost memorized is 112.123. You must inspect, maintain, clean, and when necessary and appropriate, sanitize all food contact surfaces of equipment and tools used in covered activities as frequently and reasonably necessary to protect against contamination of covered produce. And that is essentially outlines the cleaning requirement for the produce safety rule. It doesn't say how often, it doesn't say what tools, it doesn't say how. It says clean and sanitize as reasonable and necessary. So I kind of use that as my fallback when thinking about wash pack cleanliness. Now, hopefully you all are aware or familiar with this slide, but if you're not, I'd recommend you take a produce safety training because it really puts all your stresses around FSMA and produce safety at ease. It answers your questions. It's a long, either full day or a couple half days training, but whether you're qualified, exempt, or fully covered, it will answer your questions and really leave you at peace. So, but if you haven't, here's some basics. The 4 steps to cleaning and sanitizing is 1, remove the dirt and debris. 2, apply a detergent, aka soap, and scrub it. 3, rinse it with clean water, not pond water, clean water. And then 4, apply a sanitizer that is approved for food contact surfaces. And then I like to add in a step 5 because actually drying is critically important to the cleaning and sanitizing process. This is just an example of a carpet blower or a blower fan that we've used and is a great thing to implement as well. Now, wash pack equipment is generally not designed to the standards that the bakery or seafood or food production plant is, which poses its cleaning challenges. And that's where hygienic and sanitary design comes in, is that it's not as higher level, but we are still serving essentially ready to eat food. And so there are a couple things to think about when either selecting or modifying equipment, and that is the hygienic design. We've got the 5 key principles here of hygienic design, and that is that you need to have visible and reachable surfaces. If you can't see it, you can't reach it, and you can't clean or sanitize it. So I think about that as like the rolled edge of a sink. That rolled edge is actually designed to be cleanable, and it's not a folded edge. However, it's still a place that you're not going to see unless you get down on the floor and look up. So like that's an example there that may be hard to clean because you don't necessarily see it. Smooth and cleanable surfaces is point number 2. Surfaces should be smooth and cleanable to enable efficient and complete cleaning. No collection points. This is the tricky one. Niches, sandwich joints, lap joints, flat or concave horizontal surfaces should be avoided to prevent collection of water, food, and material. And then things should be made of compatible materials. And this, like trying to eliminate absorbent materials or materials that are hard to be cleaned, and try to prevent contamination. So handling systems in buildings should protect the product from contamination. Now, look at this picture. This is a barrel washer that a company that I saw on a farm. And you can tell using your own intuition, like, is this good hygienic design? So what you're looking at here is somebody used a floor mat, carpeted rubber style floor mat and bolted it in with wood in their barrel washer. It effectively cleaned their roots, yes, but it also effectively held all the rootlets and grime, did not dry well, and is a very high potential source of contamination of foodborne pathogens or plant pathogens that will just axe your shelf life. So that's an example that's not so great. Here's another one. This is on a dryer line, actually in Onions down south, I believe. And it's not all bad. You can see there's a lot of niches that are hard to clean. And this equipment has kind of fallen into disrepair, and that they've got some padding here that's fallen off, which is a contamination in itself, but B, hard to clean. You can see it was vinyl coated, which was great, but now that it's ripped and torn and needs to be replaced, it's just introducing edges of collection points, which needs to be addressed. Here's an example of a good piece of hygienically designed equipment where it's got smooth, rounded edges. It's easy to clean. It's obviously stainless, so it's easy to clean there and works well, but not everything can be perfect. Here's an example of hygienic design in facilities, or this is a wash pack example with a floor trench drain or gutter style drain. You can see they recently washed both carrots and lettuce. And these are really great for really messy environments when you're moving a lot of product through there, but they also need to be maintained. Here's an example to prove that it can be cleaned up with a little bit of elbow grease. Admittedly, this is something I did. The farmer was super surprised at how clean I got it, but I did spend like an hour and a half first shoveling out the debris, and that took a while, and letting it drain and vacuuming it out, etc. So that took a while. Here's another example of a wash pack scenario on a small farm in Vermont that does have pretty darn good design. These walls are sheet metal that they crimped together and interlocked, so it is a smooth and cleanable wall. They added a baseboard with PVC trim and flashing to help the water not creep into the building. They have a floor drain in place on concrete, which is easy to wash. Actually, in this building, they have this the white rail across the top is called a French cleat system. So they've got these shelves that they can easily move around to hang different stuff on and adapt the space to washing different needs on a day-to-day basis. This is one of the case studies that we have, Route 5 Farm, that talks about all the things they've thought about going into this building. And here's another example of something that you could implement to make cleaning more convenient, and that's cam lock fittings. So this is an example out of a bubbler tank that you can see. Instead of gluing all these joints or even press fitting them together, which can be a pain to remove if they're not glued, I added a couple fittings which spaced out the holes a little bit more, condensed the holes to one side rather than the length, and increased cost. But it also increased convenience in cleaning, because at the end of the day, you can just unclip these, no tools required, no fuss, and let them drain out. You could get a brush in there to clean it out if need be. You can see I also added a cam lock fitting on the vertical pipe that comes down with the pressurized air. So the only part that is slightly difficult to clean is this little elbow right there, but you're only cleaning one elbow at a time because you can access it from 3 different directions. Now I'm going to talk about some cleaning tools. We have a full list of cleaning tools on our website that talks about everything from brushes to brooms to scrapers to squeegees, mops, sponges, scrubbers, buckets, labels, color coding, where to purchase them, as well as videos talking about the pros and the cons of these. But you can see here's a little sampler of some of the favorite tools that we've identified that are useful in the pack shed. Our favorite brand that we've identified, really the leader. I don't want to be specific to a singular brand, but this is the leader in the food manufacturing industry as far as cleaning tools. What they've got here on this basic brush is UST, or ultra sanitary technology, where they have molded the bristles into the head of the brush, which makes it easy to clean in itself and reduces harborage points, as opposed to a standard brush, which is often drilled, inset, and stapled, which you can just imagine how much crud gets stuck way down in there that you'll never be able to clean, or difficult to dry out. Not every brush is got this technology. These here are just pressed fit in there. They don't have staples, but also very good brush. You can see it's all made with one piece of material, no seams, easy to keep clean, easy to dry. Remco is the U.S. Subsidiary that produces these, but Viken is the parent company. So they're one and the same. Viken comes out of Denmark. So you may see their names used interchangeably. Now, I wanted to leave you with some actual helpful takeaways and not just links to a bunch of resources. So here are a few examples of the common tools that we've identified that are helpful on farms. So this is a tank brush on a long 6-foot handle, and we found it was useful for washing out pallet bins. These brushes we thought worked well for cleaning flip-top totes. You can see in the upper left photo, it's a long bristled brush, but it's narrow with soft bristles, so it can get up under those handles. I know when these totes get left outside, often upside down to keep them clean, leaves and dirt and debris get blown in there in those nooks and crannies that's difficult to clean. And this was at a farm where that exactly happened. It was in November in Vermont. There was leaves blown around. They were just piled out behind the barn. And so we were testing out the cleaning tools, and that brush worked perfect for getting under the handles. And then this green brush is called a pipe or tube brush. I often refer to it as a toilet brush because that's what it makes me think of, but it works really well because it has bristles all the way around and across the tip. So it gets into the corners of crevices really well. Also works really good on 5-gallon buckets or flower buckets. So super helpful there. All of these brushes, work well for cleaning harvest lugs as well. You can see the standard UST hand brush there in the center. The bottle brush I just mentioned that gets into the corners, but the basic bristle brush also worked quite well. You can see kind of in the bottom right corner where I cleaned the left half, but not the right half. And it took surprising how little effort it actually took to scrub these out when you tried and added just a little bit of dish detergent to the water. Here's an example of some brushes cleaning bulb crates. I found I liked the softer bristles because they kind of got down in the grooves a little bit better. When you flip the crates over, there's a whole lot of texture to them, which is not like a bulb crate is not designed for hygienic design, versus a harvest lug might be a little bit more so with cleanability in mind, because there's a little bit less texture and grooves that just make it easier to clean. But bulb crates are accessible. A lot of people use them. So you can see here my colleague has got a hand brush. It's just got like a big ball on the end. So that one's kind of nice and versatile, along with these regular hand brushes seem to be a good use for most. Now, I wanted to point out squeegees. Who knew cleaning could be fun? I had farms actually reach out after using this squeegee, and they said that their crew almost fights over who gets to squeegee the floor because it works so well. That to me is a good problem to have. And now, in order to have a squeegee work well, you have to use the right one for your application. And there are a couple different styles that are offered. You got a one-piece design. It's great. I mean, it's one piece. It's easy to clean in itself. You also have this double-bladed one, which is kind of like a 1-2 punch. You know, if your first blade misses a little, maybe your floor's a little rough, your second blade will get it. This also has a replaceable cartridge. So if you get a lot of mileage or a lot of square footage on your floors and wear that out, it is technically replaceable without replacing the whole handle. And then the foam type is also a cartridge style. And the foam works best on, well, it's designed for like tile floors and grouted floors, or in farm situations, often rougher floors. So like I've found the one piece actually works better on a rough concrete floor. And then the double blade works best on the really smooth, like almost polished. But if it's rough and bumpy, the foam one works good too. I may be slightly wrong in that explanation. So before you purchase one, make sure to check out that blog post /cleaning tools and make sure you get the right one for your farm. Here's another example of a brush with bristles all the way around, and it's got a screw-in handle. Now this handle is different than the handles you might get at the hardware store. It's a different thread because it's European thread, so it's a little more fine. And B, this is a one-piece polypropylene handle, so it's hygienically designed, easy to clean because it's all one piece. There's no seams. They also have aluminum handles. I think they've got stainless handles as well. They're rugged. They work well. And this was the perfect tool for cleaning out this kind of garage style trench drain. Here's an example of a variety of brushes. And this is why we have a whole blog post about it, is because there's a lot of options out there. And I by no means can cover all of them in today's presentation, but you can see, you can get ones with handles, you can get them without handles. So whether you want something short or you need to reach 6 feet into a piece of equipment, you could do that. You can get long and flexible handles with small heads or large heads, or curved to get on the top of PVC pipes. There's a lot of options out there, and finding, taking a little bit of time to find the right tool will make all the difference. To help ease this burden and spread the education, I've created a video or a series of videos on these cleaning tools where I kind of give you a little walk around, so to speak, and talk about some of the pros and cons of the tools and what to consider, what they'd be useful for. These are all like under 60 seconds. So, a quick video on squeegees, a quick video on buckets, etc. So you can get right to the thing you're thinking about. Now I'm going to talk about color coding a little bit. It is common in the food production industry, but is not necessarily common on farms, but there's no reason why it can't be. It can really help standardize equipment. It can help with standardizing practices. And I keep thinking back to the food production industry because that's where these tools are out of. And in their situation, they may have a certain color for an allergen to keep allergen areas separate from regular production areas. They may have their equipment tools separate from their facilities tools. Kind of your zone 1 food contact surfaces from like your floor brooms going to be different. And so I tried to apply that to what's that look like on a farm. So I think, green, your go-to, it's your zone 1, your food contact surfaces, wash line equipment, the tools you use on your sinks, your green spinners, rinse conveyors, bubblers. All right. Next color, yellow, could be used for anything in the pack shed, used on floors, used on walls. Or maybe you like yellow because it stands out really well. It's easy to see. You can use whatever color you want. It doesn't matter, but that's a benefit of this particular brand of tools, is that they offer it in quite a rainbow of colors. Blue could be used if you want dedicated tools for things like an ice machine or your coolers. And that way your cooler tools aren't getting mixed up with your wash pack equipment tools. Or maybe you have tools that are like direct food contact used to move product, like this food, like the sieve shovel or a food hoe out of a barrel washer. Or maybe a spinner basket if you could use a white spinner basket, or use tools for that. And you could kind of, know that those are the tools that need to be kept the most clean because they're in the most contact with produce. And also white is very easy to see, so you can tell when it's dirty. Versus you could use black on things like drains, floor drains, trench drains, tank drains, etc. Like I was saying, there's a lot of colors available. We have some guidance or suggestions on the blog post about cleaning tools. Here's a little overview. Orange could be an animal area. Maybe you're a diversified farm. You've got chickens or pigs. So maybe you use some orange tools to kind of separate those from the produce. Red for bathrooms could be good. Maybe gray for trash cans. Maybe you've got a kitchen or a break area, so you keep some purple tools in there, or lime and pink, whatever. There's a lot of options. Picking 2 or 3 can make a big difference. And it makes it kind of fun to clean, actually, oddly enough. Now, I just went through a whole bunch of cleaning tools, and as you could probably tell, there's a lot available and a lot to choose from. So which one should you go with? You don't want to spend $1,000 on tools. So how do you spend, maybe a 100 or 2 and get the handful of tools that are really effective? So that's why we have this blog post, Farmers Favorites Cleaning Tools, or FF Cleaning Tools, with the short link there, which shares user reviews and gives you some of the farmer's top choice for specific uses and the best bang for your buck. And this blog post references some of these examples I just gave on harvest bins and pallet bins and pack sheds, etc. But I wanted to add the reminder that you don't necessarily, or you shouldn't necessarily, add water in every scenario. You don't have to have water to clean. You can use dry cleaning as well, particularly in some crops like onions or tomatoes, where those lines never see water in their normal use. And therefore, you shouldn't necessarily introduce water, because you're just adding the multiplier, so to speak, and spreading contamination rather than cleaning it. So a lot of times, using a vacuum, a brush, a dry rag goes a long ways in cleaning. Maybe you do sanitize it with a wipe at some point, or, it does get an annual wash, but hosing down a dry line isn't always a good idea. So think closely about what it is that you're cleaning and how to effectively clean it. So here's a little review of everything we went through. I talked about the scrub project, and this is just full of resources available for reference. I mentioned hand washing stations, and that is the #1 food contact surface most of the time. So it's important to keep your hands clean and your workers' hands clean. The produce safety training in module 6 is really the basics. We know what clean looks like when you walk into a facility, and I kind of think about this from an inspector. I'm not an inspector, but I think about it like, what's going to give an inspector a good feeling? If they walk in and see that it's picked up and clean, your gut feeling goes a long way. And when you walk into a space and you're like, yes, this is clean, or it's cleanable, or yeah, that doesn't make me feel good. Well, the inspector's feeling the same thing. And we know that some of the equipment we have does not have great hygienic design. So cleaning things can certainly be challenging, and do the best you can. I mean, give it an effort. A little effort goes a long ways. And when you are upgrading equipment, consider upgrades that may be more cleanable than others. Find the right cleaning tools that may make the task fun instead of painful. and consider color coding and pick your favorite color to improve some standardization on your farm. And before I wrap up or open it up to questions, I wanted to just outline that we have over 13 post-harvest case studies. So if you're looking to build a wash pack or expand your wash pack, we've got everything from projects under $10,000 and farms under an acre to examples of hundreds of thousands of dollars of investment into larger facilities, bringing in, 20, 30, 50 acre farms. So there's examples likely that will fit your scenario here that you could glean from, everything from new construction to renovating old dairy barns. And every one of these resources is packed full of photos and a video clip with an interview of the farmer talking about the pros, the cons, the things that they learned or wish they did differently. And these are just, littered with links to resources to help guide your decision making. And then lastly, I just wanted to give a shout out. I'm also the host of a podcast called The Farmer's Share. And it's a behind the scenes podcast where we visit with farmers and learn what it takes to be a sustainable produce grower across people, profits, and our planet. And this is a handful of farmers who I have interviewed mostly in the Northeast, but I'm working to expand that as I do travel around. I was motivated when I joined Extension. I'd go on these farm visits to talk about whatever. And I'm like, man, farmers have so much knowledge. I just wish that they could share a little bit of that with other growers. And that's where this podcast birthed out of. So I now take microphones and cameras with me. And if they're willing, I share their story and share those details about how they're doing what they're doing to help the whole industry. And both young farmers and experienced farmers are on the show. So I'd encourage you to check that out if you'd like. So again, I'm Andy Chamberlin, and I hope you learned something about post-harvest cleaning and sanitizing. And we've got all kinds of resources to dive deeper into. And I'm available for questions if we can take those.
Thank you so much, Andy. I really appreciate your enthusiasm and your passion for this subject, and obviously for farmers as well. Lots of good stuff. I was taking notes, thinking ahead about future projects and how I can help farmers. I'm checking the chat and the Q&A, and I'm not seeing any questions quite yet, but let's see what folks are coming up with. They're thanking you. Yeah, we've still got some time, so if anybody has questions. In the meantime, I just wanted to say too that if any of you are struggling with the record keeping related to your cleaning and sanitation, I wanted to remind you that if you went through our Produce Safety Alliance grower training, you did receive copies of templates for cleaning logs. Those are a great place to start, see if some of those fit into, into your schedule. And then we've also created a guide to help you through some of the record keeping through University of Idaho Extension. And I can make sure that that's included when we send out the recordings. Andy, do you have any tips on that? I know it's a little bit outside this subject, but anything you've observed in farms that help make it easier or more efficient for folks to keep those records of cleaning and sanitation when it's happening?
That is a good question. In short, no, I don't have too many great examples of that. Luckily, there aren't too many records that need to be kept, other than you need to sign off when you're creating a clean break, essentially, when you do clean and sanitize a piece of equipment. And people have used iPads, people have used their phones, people have used Google Sheets. Honestly, I think the lowest barrier to entry is often still just a clipboard and a pen on the wall that says, yes, this equipment was cleaned by me on a date. And keep it simple.
Yeah, that's a great place to start. So we do have one question. Maybe this is something you can answer. What are some of the rules and the regulations around gray water systems for wash water? Farms don't always have septic systems easily available. And I wonder that too, especially if you're washing or packing outdoors, you don't have that lovely drain.
Yeah, that's a good point. Most of the time, you can get away by draining your wash water, vegetable wash water, which is like the key word there when you're talking about permitting or anything. That is vegetable wash water. It can be disposed of in a grassy swale, not deposited into a ditch, so to speak, or a waterway. And you don't want it to dump where there's a high traffic area of foot traffic or truck traffic. But for the most part, it can be deposited into a grassy swale. We do have guidance on that on our website. I can find the link as soon as I stop talking and paste that. And I also want to add that this is highly specific based on where you are in your local zoning. So you'll have to check locally with your own individuals, but for the most part, you can get away with what I mentioned there.
And that's a great question. That puts me in mind for a future webinar or training or, fact sheet that might be helpful to our growers, especially those that are on the smaller scale. Oh, and it looks like Jude clarifies, I've used French drains. The gray water laws treat sub-irrigation differently. Yeah, that's a deep topic. And I don't have the answer for that one either right now. But if you want to reach out to us, Jude, maybe even via email, I could probably track down those answers for you by talking to a few other folks that work more in wastewater.
I found a link there. I just shared it.
Oh, great.
Guidance on wash water discharge from vegetable pack sheds. And this was assembled a few years ago by my colleague, Vern Grubinger.
I love Vern Grubensher's books. Use that extensively in my own graduate work. That's great. That looks really valuable. And we'll include that link in our follow-up too.
It's also linked in our blog post on drains, go.uvm.edu/drains.
Okay. Thank you for finding that so quickly. All right, well, you're welcome to keep continuing to add in any questions. I'm just going to go through my last closing slides, but we will pause and answer a question if it comes through. So like I mentioned, this was the third in our spring webinar series this year. On April 4th, we had a research update on food safety in onion production from our friend and researcher, Dr. Joy Waite-Cusick of Oregon State. Last week, we had post-harvest water use in produce production, a lot about post-harvest water, and that was with Faith Kreitzer and Laura Strawn from University of Georgia. And then today's a fabulous webinar, Basta Basics Post-Harvest Cleaning and Sanitation. So these will all be recorded, made available to you, along with any handouts or publications that were referenced during those webinars. And then another reminder that we have posted recordings, handouts, etc., for our past 3 years of webinars. And so if you're saying, I want to go back and go over record keeping a little bit, or, dive back into sanitation, we do have some of those available in our previous webinar series. So last year, we really focused on worker training and also pest management. And then the year before, we talked a little bit about GAP versus FSMA and also compost and more about pests. And then the very first year, we just were really basic about hygienic habits, sanitation, and record keeping. So those are all still available for you to view. Our YouTube is not quite as extensive as what Andrew shared, but we do have some things on there for you that hopefully benefit. So that's all I had for the webinar. I'm going to give you one more chance to ask any questions of Andy while we have him here on the call. And then just following this webinar, as soon as I hit close, a survey is going to launch automatically on your screen. We really appreciate if you can take just a few minutes there. So just, I think, 5 questions that just help us know if we are hitting the target with these webinars, what else you want to know about. We do take that into consideration when we're planning future trainings and resources for all of you. So thank you so much for joining us. And we'll give it just one more minute for any questions that might have come to your mind while we were talking. All right, remember, if you had a question that you wanted to ask anonymously, you can send it through the Q&A because only I can see those. Great, and I'm looking forward to those links that you sent us.
Anybody can feel free to email me as well if they've got additional questions about their wash pack scenarios. We're always happy to chat.
All right. Okay, well, Andy, thank you so much for this. We really appreciate your time and speaking to us from Vermont. Very exciting work going on over there. I hope that someday I can get over and see what's happening in small farms in that part of the country. It's just always been an inspiration. So thanks again for your time today. I'll go ahead and close us out here. But happy Tuesday to everyone.
You're welcome. Thanks for the invite.
All right. Bye all.